Most wizards do not like change. They are creatures of habit, their customs perhaps born from the years of isolation and sacrifice it takes to truly master their art. Most wizards spend their entire lives like they spend their childhoods, alone with their thoughts in a mind fortress built from carefully chosen stones. A vast but lonely library of ancient knowledge, built on the illusion of stability that conservatism offers. Most wizards find it comforting, the idea that they are safe in their dark, now and forever. They find the idea of changing their ways, of stepping into that awful, dangerous tomorrow, unprepared with the fortifications of their own solitude, almost anathema to their existence. But most wizards are also dead, their legacy of their work forgotten by history. Tiat Ayin isn't like most wizards. In truth, most find it difficult to believe that he even is one. Even as a Fae, a creature born of magic, he wears no robes and bears no staves. He casts no flames and brews no potions. He barely even uses the art at all, in spite of his upbringing and his people. Still, even in his post-Sixth Occult War day and age, he bears the knowledge that comes with his position, and vast talent all the same, though he utilizes it to do something more important than be an expert in the occult. He uses it to make money, and he's damn good at it. He has no equals this side of the continent. He spends each of his days carefully making sure that remains the case. For most people he considers potential enemies, just showing the true might of his criminal occult empire is more than enough to force them away. Only most. He might be a predator, and a damned good one at that, but even predators have adversaries. And Tiat fears that Richard Chappelle might even be one of them. Him and his spirit, a gang of pitiable humans thinking they can take Chicago and the New World all for themselves, thinking they can just come in and take what is his by right, forgetting the true owners of this profitable market. They think they can somehow outdo the gangs of Estebergian might that came here with the first ships that crossed the ocean more than a century ago. Officially, Tiat would never admit that he considers Chappelle anything but amusement. He has to maintain the facade of an apex hunter, unafraid of anyone and anything, bearing no equals in this part of the magical underworld. His weight class isn't that of a battle mage, but he's battle-scarred all right. And this petty little reality bender is nothing but just another fight. Just another parahuman laid low on Tiat's road to greatness. But that's only a masquerade. Deep down he knows that the spirit and its people are a formidable and unbent enemy, even to his own people, prolific in more arts than there are human languages. So tonight, in spite of all public appearances, he is meeting with the only other man he could officially consider a predator equal to Chappelle and himself. Percival Darke, the deathless merchant of London. To get the attention of he who bargains with death for long enough to even appoint a meeting is no easy task. But here he is, right in Tiat's office, eagerly awaiting his arrival, ready to bargain with him too. Tiat hates Darke like almost nobody else. Him and his damn merchants, thinking that they could own his world all by themselves. But tonight he has to chain the wolf inside him, silencing its screams to go right for the throat and take what is his by right. He does this because tonight there is a larger gamble to win than just personal vendettas and hurt egos. Tonight, the line ticks over the potential destruction of Chappelle's own up-and-coming empire. "Mr. Aying," Darke said, his pronunciation of Tiat's name bordering on proficient. "May I finally ask, what is so important that we have to meet in person?" His words might point to a different conclusion, but Darke's tone is nothing if not patient and polite. A smaller man would easily be irritated by Tiat's tactics, but he can see that the merchant is nothing if not a worthy player. He resists the urge to smile. "Ah, but Percy, is it all right if I call you Percy? A journey across the ocean shouldn't be hard for a fish as big as you, no?" Tiat sits down across Darke and flashes him a wolfish grin, trying to see if Darke's calm eyes will give in to the obvious provocation. They do not. Instead, the man behind them just crosses his legs, slowly moving his head to look directly at Tiat. "It is about business, then." Tiat snaps his fingers. "Just like everything in life, Percy. Just like everything." He knows he's walking a thin line here, provoking someone like Darke in such a crude manner, even if he thinks he could absolutely take him on. But he's also sure by the end of the conversation, his gambit will have paid off. Darke clears his throat. "So care to get to the point?" "Of course." Tiat smiles a polite smile and puts his hands together. "As we both know, we both take keen interest in the operations of one Richard Chappelle around these parts. Though on different sides of the... I have no idea what you're talking about." Tiat sighs. "Like I was saying, as we both know, he likes your money, Percy. You also like his money. It's a good business, isn't it?" He tilts his head. "Come in, give the man what he needs to get big, then take back what he owes you. He is happy, you are happy, everyone is happy. You're even smart about it." Tiat grins. "Using trains made from iron to keep my guys away, making bullets from Irolite, that's brilliant. Genuinely brilliant. Couldn't have thought of it better myself. It's clean, it's efficient, and at the end of the day, it leaves everyone, even that old fool from the factory with his supply chain, big and happy." Darke narrows his eyes. Tiat clicks his tongue. "Here's the issue, though. I really, really do not like Chappelle's money. It's dirty, it's annoying, and it gets all over my turf. My turf." He lets his teeth show for a second. "It's also hard to drive out, where even possible. It's a pain in my ass." He pauses. "But I do like your money. I like your money very much, Mr. Darke," he said, his emphasis on the last two words almost reeking of unrestrained hunger. Darke looks almost surprised, whether at the sheer gall of Tiat's word or their content. The Fae isn't quite sure. "What are you even trying to say, Mr. Ayeen?" "I don't care much for elaborate metaphors. I'm A man of business. He moves his whole body closer, leaning more heavily on the desk that separates them both. So give it to me straight. What I'm trying to say is you and me, we have time. A few centuries at least. Our magic makes sure of that, does it not? He grins at the barely noticeable spark of appreciation flying across the ageless merchant's eyes. But Chappelle, sure, he might bend reality to his will, but that's crude, isn't it? Barbaric, almost. He doesn't know how to wield his skills. And besides, he's got little more than that. I give him a few decades, at most. Someone bigger than him doesn't take him out before that. He's got no patience to. Just a short fuse that burns bright for a few years before going out with a bang. He continues. Right now, you are bound to him. With your money and the factory's gear, sure, you will probably snuff me out. Eventually. But Chappelle could never take me on in combat. But he doesn't have to. He has more men and gear. But what gain lies there? Give him a few decades, and Chappelle will forget who put him on his throne. And when he does, he will either die like an old mortal dog or take you out with the gear you gave him. He pauses for a moment. You see what I'm getting at here? Darke considers for a moment. Yes, I think I do. But none of that changes two facts. That I am bound by my word to Chappelle, and that I am bound by my signature to Rolander. Tiat scoffs. Please. The first one only keeps on living because the second one thinks business with you is efficient. And, how do I put it? I've heard rumors from my friends over at the continent that around Rolander's domain, leadership, well, it changed, Mr. Darke. He pauses, looking deep into Darke's eyes, searching for some spark of shock. He finds none, so he continues. The Foundation, they took over. Darke went right in and hanged Rolander by his balls. They control the factory now. It is now Darke who scoffs. They are fools if they think anyone can control the factory. They know nothing of the beast that lurks within. Neither did Rolander, but at least he was good at restraining it for profit. This changes nothing. Sooner or later, the beast below will take over again. And when that happens, I will be waiting, as will Chappelle. Tiat rolls his eyes. Not unless I win first. Without his trains and his weapons, Chappelle is nothing against the magic of my people. And we don't need an outside contractor to provide us with it, Darke. For a second, Darke considers. Perhaps. Chappelle is a child, desperate enough for power that he's willing to try and sit at the table with the adults. He is barely able to contain the rage that flashes inside him now. I don't mean for this meeting to be an insult to you, Darke. I mean for it to be a chance given by me to someone I consider an equal to rectify your mistake. Stop supporting the kid who grapples with the fabric of reality without understanding it, and back your money where it is truly safe. The man who has enough talent and skill to blow this whole room with just a flicker of his hands. For emphasis, Tiat lets a pillar of purple flame dance around his palm for just a second. In response, Darke simply corrects his tie. making sure that Tiat notices the Irolite necklace behind it. I think you'd be surprised to find how ineffective that would be, he says, just a hint of smug satisfaction present in his voice. But I digress. I see your argument. I will consider it. I will consider it very carefully, he says and stands up. Tiat does not. Oh, and before you leave, Mr. Darke, Tiat says, noticing the merchant's hand on the handle of his doors. If you choose to stay in your decision, today, consider one last thing. Is it really not worth losing a piece to win the game? The veil falls down the second Darke leaves the room. Where before there stood just Tiat, now stand 5 different figures. The outlines of his inner circle, now no longer obscured by spells. Still, for just a moment, they wait for Tiat's approval, a word it's safe to officially join him in his office. Seeing their hesitation, he nods, and the 4 step forward, their eyes focused only on their boss. For a few infinitely long seconds, all that fills the room is a tense hunger without direction. The feeling radiating from each of the 5 people in the general direction of everything that isn't immediately theirs. You think he bought it? The first one asks, looking at her long jade-colored nails. She would never admit it, but Tiat sees her posture betray her uncertainty. Maybe, maybe not. Only time will tell. Tiat pauses for a moment to consider, then turns to face the rest of his henchmen. He was sure you were there, though. That much I'm certain. He's a fool, but he's a fool that comes prepared. That's irrelevant, second figure retorts, its hands hidden behind its immaculately groomed silver suit. Darke knew that he was coming into our lair when he agreed upon a meeting. He was never expecting anything but danger the moment he stepped through those doors. What we gave him was mercy. He should be thankful. Oh, don't be petty, the third one says, their voice bordering on amusement. He wouldn't go down without a fight. A messy one at that. Let's just be glad the negotiations went this well. We can't afford any unnecessary risks. Not with how many of our people have marched out against the factory. The fourth one scoffs. Negotiations? That wasn't a negotiation. That was us telling him how things will be from now on. He never had the right to choose a different outcome. If he wanted to walk through those doors alive, Z turns to face Tiat, their sharp features still visible despite their age. I do believe we got him. Yes, quite well in fact. As usual, the 5th figure doesn't say anything. He just nods and crosses his steam-powered arms, similarly staring at the man that owns him. So, Tiat says, putting his hands together and eyeing his men, what is our next step? The factory has fallen, that much is certain. He looks at his first advisor, the unasked question hanging in the air between them. When she nods to confirm, he continues. Without Rolander's support, Darke has too little confidence that business will go as smoothly as before. And that's not good enough. Not for him. He pauses for a moment to consider. I give him 2 weeks to give in, at the very maximum. You might not like the fact he has to change sides, but he'll eventually come around. He takes a deep breath and stands up, turning his back to his men. He's looking at the doors now, his hands put behind his back, but can still feel the hunger and anticipation oozing from their postures. He resists the urge to smile and turns back to face them once more. But before that happens, we lay low and wait for his support to strike. And then, my friends, we go for the kill. Chappelle will not last long enough for history to remember him. He grins, and the four join him, even the fifth member, so usually stoic. For a few seconds they speak no words and exchange no gestures. They just stand there, eyeing each other in smug satisfaction, knowing that was what was always meant to be theirs by right will finally come into their grasp. His men are silent, but Tiat needs no speeches to know that they are almost bursting with anticipation. The hunger inside them burning with such a terrible need to get what it wants that it almost renders them unable to think. He doesn't need speeches because he sees it in their eyes, that awful, almost sexual desire for Chappelle's turf and Darke's money, reflected right from their souls onto their irises. And he knows that they can see it in his eyes too. He takes a moment to take it all in. A satisfaction almost. Tiat narrows his eyes. Something suddenly starts to buzz at the edge of his comprehension, ever so slightly irking at the strings of his soul. With his sixth sense, he can feel pressure building up in his ears and his heart. A terrible sensation like he's never felt before. He blinks once, and the feeling doubles, as if it's somehow come closer. He can sense it now, almost as if he was seeing it with his very own eyes. A wave of darkness approaching from the east towards him and his people, a vastness bordering on incomprehensibility. Could it be something Darke sent? An assassin, perhaps, meant to take him out. A cruel mockery of the laws of hospitality. He suddenly knows what it is. His heart rate triples. He freezes in place, unable to move. He can barely believe it, but he realizes that what he is sensing is magic. A wave of awful, inhuman dark magic on a scale that he has never seen before. It is not the work of Darke. No mortal could ever unleash something so boundless, and it is coming straight for him and all his people. The realization knocks the wind out of his lungs. He tries to speak to his men, to try and warn them, but for them it is already too late. They were never on his level of pure atomic muscle, and that gap is what renders the reaction to be ever so slightly slower. When he already knows what is about to transpire, they only begin to catch a glimpse of their inevitable fate. The realization reflected in their eyes, now no longer that of a predator, but of prey, terrified for its life for the first time in decades. And he swallows as he sees his men freeze, but decides he can no longer afford such luxuries. He knows he has 3 seconds at most, so he reaches to the deepest part of his brain, those that are concerned with magic and the arcane and the sigils and the runes. Instead of business, he tries to grab onto something, anything that might help him, any words and any spells that protect him. When he finds the little that still remains there, he takes it, he throws it, and it is not enough. Not nearly enough. to shield himself against what is coming. A sudden howling wind blows right through his office, one that breaks the windows, shattering the glass right upon his carpeted floor, an echo of the terrible laughter running right past it. And where before stood 5 of his advisers, now nothing remains. It's only ash and lost names, a mockery of his people. He feels the wave crash through his shield. It's oppressive, incomprehensible mass, breaking every bone and muscle of his soul. It's burning torture, wanting to find his own being, his own name, and take it all for itself. And, with all of his might, he tries to push back, using every part of his laughably small arsenal against this impossible enemy. And he partially succeeds, pushing just enough away for it to not take him whole, but he can still feel its cold claws dig right into his body, and his mind, and his soul, and everything he ever thought was his. And then there's darkness. He awakes to blackness so vast it is almost incomprehensible. It takes him a few seconds to realize he is simply dead. He tries to slowly stand up, but finds that he has no longer any legs, or any body for that matter, to call his own. No, that's impossible. That's impossible, he tries to say to himself, but he realizes that it's the truth. It's the terrible, living truth that he has to face. For the first time since he was born, he has nothing. His body and mind, his empire and his business, his men and his power, all stripped from him, as if it was never there. No, that isn't true. He still has something left. He knows it before he can form thoughts with a brain that isn't there. Despite the death of his body and mind, the being that had once been Tiat Ain still has its name and soul intact, both stuck in some state of semi-death right between worlds. He breathes an irreal sigh of relief. At least that much remained. That little, he can never afford to lose it. The second the realization dawns on him, the void before him starts to move. His whole being irks with the need to have it. It is subtle at first, but with each second he continues lingering on the ripples in non-existence, spin ever so faster and ever so closer, the movement almost hypnotic in its terrifying beauty. Without hesitation, he reaches for the only thing he can possibly still own. The magic all around him, the scattered energy of his talent left there as ambiance the second the wave hit him. It touches Tiat's very soul. It is an ugly, scared, deeply hungry thing of a being left inside this nonsensical state. So the magic fills in the missing blanks. Tiat has no memory of how he used to look, no longer having access to any remembrance. So the energy takes the only emotions still left inside him: unfiltered greed and fear, a desperate need to retain what little of him still remains, and molds him into a form most adequate. When the process is finished, Tiat stretches his far too many fingers. The magic is gone now, its essence molded into what has become of Tiat. He hates losing it, losing something that was his. So much that words can barely describe it. But he knows that he hasn't lost everything. His name, it's still in him, buried deep inside his new form. He realizes that this is all he has left. In a once mighty soul, now reformed to be little more than a spirit unraveling at its ends. He also realizes he fears nothing more than losing it. The only thing still his in the whole wide world. He'll bend heaven and earth to keep what little he still has left. He disappears into the vast darkness around him. Just one thought lingering inside his mind. Keep, keep, keep.